Hello and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with Steffanie Holmes. I'm Trisha, and for the past 5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams, learning the business so I can share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I've worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. But we're here to talk to Steffanie. Steffanie Holmes turned a failed archaeology career into a great opportunity, which is full-time writing, and became a USA Today best-selling author of the paranormal, gothic, dark, and fantastical. Her books feature clever, witty heroines, spooky mysteries, and secret societies. Winner of the 2017 Attitude Award for Artistic Achievement, Steffanie is dedicated to helping other writers build a great career and supports them with a variety of resources, including a skeleton drafting method for pantsers like her, and books and a podcast. She lives in New Zealand with her husband, a horde of cantankerous cats, and her medieval sword collection. Welcome, Steffanie.
Hello.
Good morning. It's very
Good
early
morning.
for you. Thank you so much.
It is very early for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for waiting for me.
Welcome. All right. So we always start off by talking about how you got your start. So failed archaeology, huh?
Yes. So I always wanted to be an archaeologist. That was I think the first thing I ever wanted to be was a World War I flying ace, like Snoopy. And my parents sort of never explained to me, which is big credit to them, never explained to me that World War I was over. But that's fine. Yes, I wanted to be an archaeologist since I was about 7 years old, and I was just always so fascinated in old things and ancient societies, and the people that lived in them, and I always sort of wished I could be in ancient Egypt and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I went to university to study archaeology, and it was amazing. And I did so many wonderful things. I worked in a museum. I got to go to Greece and do all these excavations. It was incredible. And then I finished university and I tried to find a job. And you might can kind of see that like my eyes are a bit squinty and things like that, and that's because I'm legally blind. And it it became very apparent when I tried to look for paid work that it was going to be very difficult for me to succeed in the industry. And a part of that was my own limitations. It's very hard to practical archaeology work is literally looking at dirt and trying to discern different colours of dirt from the other colours, which is basically the worst possible thing you could be doing with my eye condition.
Uh-huh.
And but a lot of that was the discrimination from people, and having to try and convince people that I can do things that I know I can do,
Mhm.
when they, because of their own conceptions about, misconceptions about, having a blind person working for them.
Mhm.
Um, and so I tried for about 18 months to find a job, and it was just getting very depressing. And I was getting all this pushback and all of this, oh, we just think you might destroy the artifacts, or you know, you might you might get lost, or just ridiculous things. Um,
Mhm.
and I had one particularly bad experience, and I came home and I was crying. And my husband said to me, well, you could kind of look at this in sort of a couple of ways. You could say, well, you could keep going, which
Mhm.
is totally fine if that's what you want to do. Or you could say, well, maybe I have done archaeology. You've got to do all these really cool things, and you went to this museum and it was really cool. And maybe you could say, well, what would be the thing that you would like to do next? What would be the career that you would like to have next? And what would
Mhm.
be a career that you would love, that you wouldn't have to constantly have to sit down and convince people and prove to them that you can do something that you know you can do, and I know you can do.
Right. Right.
And yeah, and so the immediate thought that came to me was I would love to be a writer. And I didn't even know how writers earned a living. And so I had to Google, how to make a living as a writer. And I was like,
Right.
oh, okay, I better try all those things. So I basically spent about a decade trying all the different ways to earn a living as a writer. And
Uh-huh.
I've always written fiction. Always wanted to be a novelist. And so I was doing that,
Mhm.
and I ended up with a publishing deal with a big five publisher, and it was
Okay.
incredible, and I was very excited. And then the editor that I was working with decided to retire, and the publisher decided it would be time to cut down her list, basically. So they cut her list in half, and I was one of the people that got cut. So my books hadn't even come out yet, and
Oh,
suddenly, like 10 years of work I just felt like it was down the drain.
right.
Yeah, and this was about the time when, some of the early authors on KDP were starting to talk about, how amazing it was.
Mhm.
And, I'd always been aware of self-publishing, but, it was sort of, in the early days, it was sort of a thing that you did if you were, kind of a failure. And so I'd never considered it as an option.
Mhm.
But then all these people were starting to talk about it. And then the other thing that happened was that I was given an e-reader. And I, as a blind person, so I can read print if I basically read it with my nose. I can read it really close. And I saw this e-reader, and I could enlarge, to massive size, all the text and all of the books that
Uh-huh.
I ever. And I was like, wow. And I didn't have to hold giant hardbacks up like this. I could carry
Right.
so many books. Yeah, they were just awesome. I was so excited. And so I thought, this is what I want to do. So I started self-publishing the ebooks as ebooks, the books that I had been rejected
Right.
by the publishing company, and it was so much fun.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just heaps of fun. And so, sorry, this is a very long story.
No, that's okay. It's a very interesting story. I love it.
Good, good. Yeah, so I did that, and so I think 2013, 2014, I published my first books, which were three sort of dark science fiction books, and
Uh-huh.
I was so proud of them. They did really poorly. I was selling a few copies a month, literally like 2 copies a month kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to a party, and a friend there was talking about 50 Shades of Grey. And I think the movie had just come out, and she loved it, and I wasn't so keen on it. And so we were having a discussion about it, and she sort of said, well, it's not like you could write a book like that. And I thought, well, I sort of said, yeah, well, you're probably right. It's not really my style. But in my
Uh-huh.
head, I was challenge accepted. So in secret, without telling anyone, not even my husband, I wrote this little sort of 30,000, 40,000, I think it was 30,000 word novella, which was
Mhm.
a paranormal romance, which is always a thing I've enjoyed reading. A little
Mhm.
sexy fox shapeshifter romance book. And I slapped up a $50 cover that I got from someone, and I made up a secret pen name, and I published it. And I thought, maybe I'd just tell my husband in a few months, and we'd, tell my friend, and we'd laugh about it. And then it sold 1,000 copies in a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I went, oh wow. I thought, this is one book, and there are readers out there who want this book, and they were all starting to email me and say, oh, we want to know what happens next. And I was like, yeah, I was like, oh crap. um, and so I had to tell my husband. I thought I better tell him that I just actually made some money from publishing this month, but not from my super serious science fiction, but from
Uh-huh.
this the Fox shapeshifter novella. And when he had stopped laughing, he said, "Well, are you going to write some more?" And I thought, well, yes, I am. So I did. So that was 2015,
Uh-huh.
and that book that came out, I think it was roughly when KU 2.0 came out. And
Mhm.
I've been publishing about every second month ever since. I've got about 45 books now,
Mhm.
and I went full time as an author in 2018, and it's been amazing. And yeah, that's basically my story.
Congratulations. I mean, that's persistence one. I know that a lot of authors would have kind of given up early on. So congratulations on your persistence in deciding that, hey, this is what I really want to do and trying something new. So you predominantly write in that dark gothic, you know, romance now, predominantly,
Yeah,
right?
yes, and it's been really interesting because I've been able to kind of combine a lot of the things I'm really passionate about
Hmm.
into into this genre. So I use a lot of the knowledge that I had as an archaeologist, and
Hmm.
kind of all those ancient societies, and
Hmm.
when I do kind of secret societies and things, they're often inspired by that, and I do a lot of the kind of like sort of murder mystery books with a romance plot, and so
Uh-huh.
to kind of have that kind of side of things. And I'm a bit of a, I'm a bit of a goth, so I get to do a lot of that. So it's just been incredible. Yeah.
Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a goth. But that brings up a question. We get a lot of questions about what's the new trending genre, right? So people think that they have to write in that new trending genre in order to be a successful author. Now, you don't do that.
Not really, no. I sort of try, but I can't help kind of Steffifying things. So, I can't help being, it was a couple of years ago, bully romance as
Uh-huh.
a genre was really big and still pretty big. And I was like, I'm going to write one of those. But then, of course, it ended up being like this sort of was almost a horror novel with kind of like a Lovecraftian universe. As as a bully romance, it's a completely wrong thing for the genre. But
Uh-huh.
I think because I have such a specific voice and I have such a like um, established brand in that you know that if you pick up a Steffanie Holmes book, you know what you're getting. You were getting this like crazy mystery, gothic. You're basically
Hmm.
getting a gothic romance, even though we don't tend to advertise as gothic romances these days because it's not something that readers really, readers don't know that's what they like, but that's what they
Right.
like.
Yeah,
Um,
they're not sure of that term.
yeah, and
Right.
look, it takes longer. I think it's a slower build to build a brand that's kind of like this, but if you've got a very distinctive brand voice, then over time that is going to see you in the long term. That's going to see you, I think, much more right
Hmm.
than just kind of doing this trend over here and this trendy thing over here and going kind of everywhere.
Right.
I think long term it helps to build like a really loyal readership.
So speaking of how to build a really loyal readership, how did you build your readership? I mean, obviously the it took off a little bit with your novella, and I'm assuming you moved into actual novels instead of just keeping with novellas, right?
Yeah, exactly. I did three novellas to begin with, to
Hmm.
kind of finish the story, and then I sort of looked at, that was sort of when I made the decision. I'm gonna keep writing. And
Hmm.
I'm really enjoying this. I'm going to keep writing romance, and I went, okay, well now I'm going to think a bit more strategically, and novels are really fun. They're what I really enjoy. So I basically haven't really written novellas since. I'm quite wordy, so I always
Okay.
start and think, oh, I'm just gonna write 50,000 words. It's gonna be so much easier than a big long novel, and then it ends up being 100,000 words. Um, so
But it seems to be working. So,
it's exactly, it seems to be working. Yeah, so I wrote three books, three novellas, and then I started on novels. And I basically sort of one book at a time. I built the genre. I came from a marketing background, so before, when I was trying to become a full-time author, I was also working as like a marketing copywriter and things like that. So I already knew about things like building a newsletter, and I could sort of build myself a decently slick-looking website, and so I already had that kind of infrastructure in place
mhm,
right from the beginning. And I've been quite solid with the brand right from the beginning as well. So I've never really swapped around genres or subgenres or different kind of like heat levels in romance and things like that. So
mhm,
that's been a big it's just that consistency. I've
right.
always published, no matter what's going on in my life, I've always basically published something every 2 months, I think. So readers know what to expect.
So what does that look like? I mean, every 2 months, that's a lot of writing. So what does your day look like in order to accomplish that?
It was it's different. Before I had before this was my full time job
Hmm.
versus after. So now my goal is to try and write 4,000 words a day. So I get up in the morning. I try to write 2,000 words in the morning when which is my best time for writing. Then I have a break for lunch and I hug some cats and I eat some good food, and then I come back and write another 2,000 words. And I just do it with a timer. I set my timer for 20 minutes. I write, I take a couple of minutes for a break, I do it again. And sometimes
Hmm.
I just forget about the timer and I just go tappity tap. Uh, when I used to have a day job, I would have to try and squeeze my writing around my job, which was got increasingly difficult because I worked in the tech industry and they expected
Hmm.
sort of long hours, and I was always very diligent about I would people would email me at 8 p.m. at night and say, oh, could you just do this thing, and I would say, look, that's not actually urgent, like you think it's urgent but it's not actually urgent, so I'm not doing it, I can do it tomorrow. And
Right.
so I would I would write on my lunch breaks. I used to work from home quite a lot, so I would kind of write when the office didn't expect me to be actually actively working. I would write hunched over my laptop on the bus to and from my job, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it did, that I used to be able to get 2,000 words a day written on the bus.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so I would just try and find these little pockets where any pocket where I could get 20 minutes to
Hmm.
write was a good time. And I could usually get sort of 1 to 2,000 words a day in the middle of, during the week, and I could get a little bit more on the weekends.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I was just having too much fun that it was hard to stop.
Right. Now, we heard in your intro, and we've talked about this before, you are a pantser. And for those of us joining who don't kind of understand that term, most people are either a plotter, which means that they do a really detailed outline, they know exactly where their story is going, or what we call a pantser, which is a fly by the seat of your pants kind of writer. Now, you are a pantser, but you have a skeleton outline technique that you use for your books. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yes, so I have always written like this, and I sort of never knew until I was talking to another writer that this
Mhm.
wasn't how everyone else wrote books. Like I just thought this was what you did,
Right.
and so I kind of realized it was a slightly useful sort of way to approach writing as a pantser, or as a gardener is the term I really like.
Hmm.
And so what a skeleton draft is, or a skeleton outline is what I do is I will fast draft the book in about 3 days. So I kind of make a book in layers, like an onion. And so in about 3 days, I will fast draft about 20,000 words, 15 to 20,000 words of a 70 to 90,000 word novel. It is a mess. It is you would never show this draft to anyone, but in 3 days you can write, you can get the shape of a story. You can get the rough, this is what happens in each chapter. Most of the chapters I write will be like 200 words, or sometimes even just like 2 lines of dialogue. But I get all the action and all the emotion and the plot, and I get to know the characters as I'm doing that 3-day draft. And so usually as a pantser, when you begin, well, I find when I begin, I sort of roughly know this is the kind of book I want to write. I know this is the character I'm interested in, and maybe there's a couple of scenes I know what's going to happen, and I usually know what's going to happen at the beginning. I've got that kind of beginning hook nailed down, and so I write that beginning scene, and that will usually be pretty well fleshed out. It might be 15,000 words for a 2,000 word finished scene. And then I go, okay, what's going to happen next? And so the plot sort of logically follows one step to the other. And the skeleton draft is where I figure out all the like plot twists and the red herrings and things like that. So I do that all in like a mad 3-day writing binge. And then I go back to the beginning of it and I add more words and I add a second layer and tidy up everything. And now I know the character a lot better. So I understand, where she's coming, if it's a heroine, where she's coming from, where she's going to. I know all the twists I've got coming, so I can foreshadow them. I know all these things, so I add this extra layer, and then I get to about 50,000 words, and then from 50,000 words, I do a third draft where I kind of tidy up all the prose, and I get to that sort of about that 70,000 word mark, and then I do a final read through where I like go sentence by sentence and I just make it sound really pretty. So I basically do 4 go throughs. But so the skeleton draft is particularly useful, I find, because we always talk when we always talk to pantsers or gardeners, we often tend to say, if you want to write faster, then you're going to have to outline. And I say no, because I don't like outlines, and I don't like wasting time. And no offense to any outliners out there, but I always feel like outlining is a waste of time because you are writing words that aren't going in the book. And one of the cool advantages of using a skeleton draft as a pantser, and as pantsers we need all the advantages we can get because we tend to go off on a bit of a tangent, and we often end up deleting more words and things like that than an outliner. So one of the big advantages of being a pantser and using a skeleton draft is that you're sort of, in a way, kind of making an outline. But at the end of making your outline, you have 10 or 20,000 words of your finished novel done.
Right.
So it feels pretty cool. Yeah, so that is basically the skeleton draft.
And that works. And the thing is, I think that what that illustrates is that everybody needs to find what works for them. And I think that there are some people that are going to pull that and actually use that to their advantage, is where other people, they need that outline and to be able to say, okay, this person has the same name throughout the entire book, or when I write a series, all the same characters show up in the series, right?
Exactly. And I always think of it as a spectrum. We all sit on one end is extreme pantsers, on the other hand is extreme plotters, and we all sit somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. And
exactly.
Exactly. It's been really interesting. I wrote a little tiny mini course all about the skeleton drafting method last year, and I get a lot of mail, probably more mail about that than anything else I've ever done, from writers saying, this just changed my life, and it doesn't click with everyone, but when it clicks, it really clicks.
So if somebody wanted to access that course, where is it located?
It is located on my website for my podcast, which is called Rage Against the Manuscript. And yeah, and so you'll find that on www.rageagainstthemanuscript.com. It's just under the courses tab called Writing Your Skeleton Draft.
Excellent. And we'll repeat that afterwards. So if you can't find it right now, we'll talk about it again later, and Steffanie will give us that information again. All right. So we talked about writing. We've talked about your brand. So I'm thinking that maybe now's the time we can start taking some questions from the attendees. I know that one of the questions that we received from another author who is blind, she wanted to know, what tools do you use to write to make it easier for yourself?
I basically use settings that are already available on my computer. So I have a beautiful kind of curved screen. So I have some vision, which is probably good to be clear about that. So I use a beautiful curved screen, and my husband built me this kind of special stand, so the screen sits right on my nose, basically. And I make the browser tabs large, so I use and I use large print when I write, and I use the invert color setting, which is available in the accessibility settings on your computer. And so a lot of my condition is that, so I don't have any cone cells in my eyes, which are the cells that you use to see color. So I can't see any color, and I'm quite light sensitive because I'm basically using my nighttime cells during the day. So I invert all the colors so that it's a black background with white text instead of a white background with black text, and that helps bring down the glare. And I have this kind of, you can sort of see behind me, this like very dark writing library cave. So no sunlight, which is good. And I'm just trying to think if there's any other tools I use. So it's mainly, being able to access things where I can enlarge the print size and ideally invert the colors. So, when I do speaking engagements, I use an iPad to, instead of printing out notes and things, I use an iPad which inverts the colors, and I can have a huge text on it and hold it about here, which is much nicer.
I think that's a really helpful tip. I know that inverting the colors, I think, may help other authors that are in a similar situation. We have some questions a little bit about your, to follow up on some of the points that you made about the skeleton draft. We have a couple follow-up questions. Do you have editors or beta readers that then go through your book after you finish?
Yes, absolutely. So my husband is my beta reader, and he is very mean, which is exactly what you want in a beta reader. And so he tends to catch sort of the continuity errors, which is the biggest issue that I have. And I write relatively clean drafts, and that they don't need much editing for. The prose sounds good, but I do end up with continuity errors. One page someone's got green eyes, the next page they've got blue eyes, that kind of thing. He is very good, very, very good at picking those up, and he picks up big, sort of plot issues that I might have, which doesn't come up often, but when they do, he's the one that catches them. And then I go to an editor, and the editor does kind of basically a line edit, and she picks up all the little spelling mistakes that I've missed. And then I have a proofreader who just catches the last sort of 30 to 50 little tiny things that the editor's missed. And, different authors have a different process, and, it's taken me 45 books to kind of realize that this is the process. I need those 3 people to turn out the quality of product that I'm happy with.
Who else is on your team? Do you design, coming from a marketing background, do you design your covers? Do you have somebody else design your covers?
Absolutely not. No, because obviously because of my my color blindness,
Uh-huh.
that cover design is something I definitely chose to outsource
Mhm.
pretty much immediately. And I work with about sort of three different cover designers, and I give them very free rein. Like I try to pick cover designers that you can see through their work that
Uh-huh.
they not only make amazing covers that look good, but they're very, very skilled at seeing what the market does and
Mhm.
creating covers that fit the market really well. And then that's the kind of designer that I will hire that doesn't need a lot of or doesn't want a lot of direction from authors. And I say, here are some things that are in the book that you might like to include. Go crazy, and that's worked really well.
I think that calling out the fact that they know the market is really key when you're looking at hiring or a designer, because of the fact that this is your elevator pitch, right? This is the first thing that people see. They'll search and then they'll see that cover. And I think that it's a great suggestion to make sure that the designer that you're using knows the market and knows that audience.
Exactly, and it's it's also very important for me that my covers kind of fit my brand, and I've been doing a lot of experimenting with covers over the last couple of years. So
Hmm.
one thing that I have been doing is that I want to move as a romance author, and I've done a little bit of reverse harem romance in the last couple of years, which has been amazing. But as a romance author, I am quite interested in moving away from the sort of the sexy man chest covers and the single woman covers onto object covers, which I personally find really attractive. I love
Right.
the cover, like the original cover of Twilight, where it's the hands holding the apple. I mean, that is just perfection as a cover, and that's the kind of brand I want to have. But object covers are a bit of a risk.
Hmm.
Sometimes they work amazing and sometimes they don't work at all. And, for a romance author, you immediately go, sexy man chest, that's always going to work. That's
Right.
always going to sell books. It just is. And, a woman on the cover usually will work as well,
Hmm.
especially in reverse harem. Because it's quite hard to like crowd like five guys onto a cover.
Right.
So it just makes sense and it kind of signals the genre. But object covers don't necessarily signal the genre as well.
Hmm.
So I've been doing a lot of, each time I release a new series, I'll often have an object cover and a cover with a person on it, and I'll use Amazon ads we'll use ads to test them and
Hmm.
see which cover works the best, and then choose that one. Yeah.
How is that working? So are you seeing that a lot of people are trending more towards the object covers, or are they trending more towards that traditional, you have a person on the cover and I recognize this um, as a romance?
It very much depends. It very much depends. So, I've had one series with object covers, which has been my most successful series to date,
Uh-huh.
bar none, hands down, no question. And, but then the series I wrote after that, complete, had object covers for about 3 months, complete flop with object
Oh.
covers, absolute flop. And so it seems, I don't know why, it seems to vary by series for me. So yeah, so I can't specifically, I can't say that there's any trend that I've seen one way or the other,
Uh-huh.
just that object covers seem to be really hit and miss. And I just would love them to hit all the time, please. But it doesn't happen.
We would all love to be able to do a cookie cutter and say, this is the way it is and this is always works. But I think, but it doesn't. It is, to your point, hit or miss. You test something, see if it works. You test something else, see if it works.
Exactly. And it's one of the really amazing things about being an indie author is that we were able to do this. If I was still with a traditional publisher, I would
Hmm.
get the cover that they gave me.
Hmm.
And, we wouldn't, if the book wasn't selling, they wouldn't come to me and say, well, what do you think it could be? They just keep trying to sell it. But I'm able to, in a week or so, I can set up a cover test and I can, get a designer to make a new cover and I can pivot and it's just, it's just mind blowing. It's incredible.
So do you pivot on anything else besides the covers, like the description? Do you test different descriptions or any other branding?
Oh yes, I'm quite good, I think, at writing blurbs now. It's weird because I love writing the blurbs before I've written the book, which is when I always do them. So when I'm thinking about a new series, I will write the blurb and then I'll have a little uh, online discussion group with a few other authors, and we usually just fire our blurbs back to each other. And if everyone says, "Oh, that sounds amazing," then I'm like, "It's cool." So I love writing the blurbs before I've written the book, and it just really kind of solidifies this is the hook of this book that you're really excited about. But I hate writing them if I have to write them after the book is written. I'm like, oh, they're so hard. But sometimes I will test blurbs in the same way that I would test a cover.
Uh-huh.
Often with romance, what you test, what I'm testing is a first person blurb versus a third person blurb,
Hmm.
and third person being much more traditional, but first person being really easy to kind of capture the character's voice, the voice of the book, and for some books that just works so well.
Hmm.
So I often test blurbs. I have done all sorts of things. I have tested, I had a series where sort of book four, the read through from book 4 to book 5 in the series seemed to drop, lower than I would expect.
Hmm.
And I thought maybe it was the cliffhanger in the book was turning people off because someone died.
Oh,
You know, yeah, a main love interest died, although it's paranormal, so they can
right.
come back.
They can come back.
And I thought it was quite obvious that I thought I'd spent 4 books kind of establishing the fact that they could come back, but I thought maybe this was the problem, so I cut the end of the book and pushed about 2 chapters from that book into the next book, and so made the cliffhanger at an earlier place, and then ran experiments to see does that improve the read through, and that was
Mhm.
quite interesting. It actually didn't,
Oh,
and I really expected it to. But it just shows you that sometimes that's how good it is to test your assumptions. So I actually changed it back because I thought the dying one was a much better cliffhanger.
um, so we have a question here. Um, so do you ever feel painted into a corner when you go down one road and discover that something's not working, when you're writing?
When I'm writing,
Yeah.
no. When I'm writing, when I'm in the book, if something's not working, I know that for me it's because the character, I'm trying to force the character to do something plot wise
Hmm.
that is against their character. That is usually the reason why things are, so if I'm not working, I know that there's something fundamentally wrong with what I'm trying to do, and it's usually that reason, that I'm trying to force the character to do something that's outside of their character, and I need to go back, and I go back usually about 2 scenes, and I need to ask, what would this character do next? Not what do I need them to do for the plot,
Hmm.
but what would this character do next? That's one reason. And then the other reason, if I get stuck, the other reason that often happens is that I've got no conflict. Is that the character isn't being active in the story, that things are happening to them, but they are not influencing the things. And I've got to a point where they've kind of reacted to all the things, and now I'm like, well, what do you do next? And that, so then I have to go back and I have to ask, how do I make this character more active? And
Hmm.
so, after the number of books that I've written, I kind of know by now that when I get stuck, those are the reasons that I get stuck. And so I'm always able to ask myself that. So I don't usually get stuck for long.
Great advice. That's the first time I've heard that, but makes total sense.
Oh,
Um,
good.
Stephen wants to know about your early marketing efforts. especially marketing on a really limited budget. How did you start marketing your books early on?
I Early on is interesting because I think the things that I used to do don't necessarily, work as well now.
Mhm,
But early on, the things that I was doing was very early on in my career, I ended up on a online forum for romance writers. So I was sort of every day, I was always talking to other romance writers, and that was incredible because I could, private message, people who were doing the same thing in my genre, and we
mhm,
were always talking, so they knew who I was.
mhm,
And so, so in those early days, things that I was doing, I had my newsletter already in place. Right
mhm,
at the back of my books, as soon as people finished the book, I would, had my link to my newsletter.
mhm,
Then I would always cliffhanger my books. So, and I love a super mean cliffhanger, very mean cliffhangers. People always dying, or they're literally hanging off cliffs, or, they've literally been convinced they're crazy, or something like that. I'm very mean. Uh, and so cliffhangers help with read through, which is a marketing tactic. So
mhm,
newsletter, cliffhangers, and then I had this author community. And the great thing about hanging out with other authors and collaborating with other authors is on marketing is that it's basically like warm leads. So,
mhm,
when you're advertising with, say, Facebook ads, from the beginning, you're advertising books to people that don't necessarily read books or don't necessarily read indie books or have read
mhm,
one big name book this year but don't read, 20 books a month the way my readers do.
mhm,
But if you're working with other authors and they're, say, putting your book in their newsletter and you're putting their book in your newsletter, then their readers read similar books to you.
mhm,
They read indie books and they read ebooks, and
mhm,
so that was super valuable to me. Everyone was always hustling, and oh, send out a newsletter. We need some free books or things like this. We were doing a lot of box sets
mhm,
back when that was sort of multi-author box sets. Back when that was a really kind of really effective way to build a readership. First, book one on a box set,
mhm,
and then the rest of the series, would have a higher read through from all those new box set readers,
mhm.
and that's it's still effective, but it's just early days there were less authors. And a big readership who was hungry for more books. And now there are lots of authors, and there's still a big readership hungry for books, but it can just be a little bit harder to be seen.
I think that though reaching out and building that author community is just as important as building your readership, to your point, uh, because writing can be a bit of an isolating topic or you know career. So being able to find other like minds or people that are in a similar position, then you don't have to do all the testing because they're doing some of the testing and you can learn from each other. How did you
Exactly.
build your Mhm. How did you build your author community?
Just by being on, online forums. Lately a lot of the author community sort of really hangs out on Facebook. So
Mhm,
I just try and be nice to people, and I try to, talk, and when people post things about, successes that they have, I'm, always try to be first to say congratulations, because when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. And I just try and be nice, and I try and be helpful, and I, try and I think about the things that were really useful for me, and I
uh-huh,
try and be that person for other people. And yeah, I guess that, and trying to find places where authors in your specific genre hang out, because
mhm,
that's more useful than general author readers.
right.
And yeah, and I try to keep any kind of, I try to just always be positive and happy, and I try not to, I always talk about things that have gone wrong in my career, but I try to keep sort of personal life and politics and that kind of thing out of, out in my author community building, because I just think it's it's kind of like your colleagues at work,
Hmm.
and certain things you don't talk about in the office, and I think it's kind of the same thing when you're hanging out with other authors. But then you build up friendships, and
Hmm.
I've got author friends that we talk on the phone every week,
Hmm.
which is amazing, and kind of hold each other accountable, and those are friends, and we talk about everything. Yeah.
Right, right. Um, what about audiobooks? So you publish an ebook. Do you do print and audio as well?
Yes, so I also do print, always do print. Don't sell very many, but it is fun, and I line them all up on my bookshelf and look at them, and it's amazing. I have started in audiobooks. I started last year, and
Hmm.
I would love to have every book I've ever written an audiobook. It's really important to me because it's an accessible format for for blind and low vision readers.
Uh-huh.
I don't personally listen to audiobooks. I prefer to read, but I know how important they are for my community. So I
Hmm.
would love to have everything, but it's just there's a expense hurdle, um, and obviously because I'm in New Zealand, that can make things difficult as well, because some of the audiobook platforms aren't open outside of the
Right.
US. But but we get by. So I have about 8 books, I think. Maybe one,
Uh-huh.
two, three. Yeah, I think it's 8 books at the moment in audio, and I've got about 3 more that are in the process of coming out. And audio has been a slow build for me,
Hmm.
um, and I think I think it's that factor that if you release an audio book the same time you release the print books, you'll have a much better sort of return on your investment than if you release them several months later. And
Hmm.
my most successful series, which earns me the most in audio, the books were released months after the actual releases.
Mm. Okay.
So yeah, so it takes longer to kind of pay out. I'd love to get into translations, but I just haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah, that's a talk about another expense and a whole nother project management skill.
Exactly.
Um, so are you still completely self-published or do you have a publisher as well?
I am. I would say I'm still completely self-published. I had a publisher so I wrote a children's book a couple of years ago, because I had quit my day job, and this book was in the back of my head as a project I really wanted to do. It's a book about a little Grim Reaper who gets bullied, and because he's different, and
Uh-huh.
it's very gothy and very cute and very fun. And I always, I was bullied as a child because of my eyesight, because I was different, and so it was a very personal story. And I hooked up with a good friend who was an excellent illustrator, and we wrote this book, and we did a Kickstarter campaign for it. And we were
Hmm.
always planning to self-publish it, and then the Kickstarter campaign was really successful, and so a small press publisher approached me and said, "Hey, we could publish it." So I went through that process with a small press publisher, and it was lovely. They made an amazing book. We got to come out in hardcover, which was not something I was going to do. Uh,
Right.
and so that was a really cool experience. However, what that highlighted to me is that I loved putting that book out. I don't really have any desire to continue to publish children's picture books. Like
Hmm.
if an idea absolutely bit me, I would go and do it. But I'm really focused on my self-publishing,
Hmm.
and on my brand. So it wasn't quite. I didn't want to continue with that. So
Hmm.
sort of for the moment, I am completely self-published,
Hmm.
apart from that one book, and I love it. And I don't see myself changing anytime soon. But
Hmm.
you never say never.
Right. Um, Now, you mentioned earlier that those novellas that you wrote were under a pseudonym. Did you rebrand them as part of your brand? Or are you still publishing under that pseudonym? Or how did that work? Did you bring everything into
No,
one
so
space?
Yeah, so Steffanie Holmes was
Uh-huh.
the pen name that I published under
Okay.
originally, and that is still my pen name.
Uh-huh.
And Stephanie is my first name because I thought, well, I didn't want to. I thought, well, what if, when I was kind of inventing a pseudonym, I thought, well, what if I got really famous or something, and just what if that happened? And
Right.
I didn't want to give myself a name like Rachel or something, where I'd be at a convention or something and someone yelled out Rachel and I didn't turn around.
Right.
So I wanted to be, if I was going to be famous, I wanted to be famous under my own name, my own first name. So I
Uh-huh.
chose Stephanie, and then I thought, well, it's going to be a romance name.
Hmm.
So so I want to, so I'm going to have a bit of fun. So I thought, well, if I could have a dream, any sort of husband from a famous book, or a fictional character as a husband, as a
Hmm.
book boyfriend, who would that be? And I have always been a bit obsessed with Sherlock Holmes. I've obviously got a Sherlock Holmes
Oh,
tattoo.
wow. Uh-huh.
So I thought, well, I would love to be, I'd be married to Sherlock Holmes. So that hence my pen name, Steffanie Holmes.
That works. Um, let's see. I'm trying to find a really good one because we're almost out of time. Um, so we've had a couple questions. Do you narrate your own audiobooks or do you hire that out?
No, I don't narrate my own audiobooks. I hire it out. And yeah, and the narrators are amazing. And I would definitely recommend that, unless you had experience.
Hmm. Okay. So if somebody is just starting out, they haven't even written anything yet, what's the first thing they should do?
Write a book. um, and the thing I always say is to not quit before the miracle. It's a lot of work to write a book, and it feels like a very big hill to climb because it's just so many words. For so many people, it's the most words you're ever going to put together about one thing in your entire life.
Hmm.
And when you start, you might write 250 words, and you think, well, what's that? That's not even like, it's just a drop in the bucket of a novel. So how am I going to do this? And it's just one word at a time, and it's that simple and it's that difficult.
Hmm.
I always break it down into little tiny goals. I try to do things in 1,000 word chunks. But even if you wrote 250 words a day, in a
Hmm.
year's time, you're going to have the draft of a book.
Hmm.
And that's like 3 paragraphs. It's a tiny amount to get through, and it's so completely manageable.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's kind of my advice. And is to not quit before the miracle, which is something I always say. It took me until it was about book 30. It was about book 30 before I could
Hmm.
quit. Maybe it was about book 25, I think, before I was earning enough sort of consistently that I could quit my day job. But if I
Hmm.
hadn't written those previous 25 books, if I hadn't written 24 books before book 25, I never would have got to this point. And I was
Hmm.
book 30, it was book 33 before I had a book that, hit the top 100 on Amazon, or, did really, really well.
Hmm.
And it was incredible. But if I hadn't written those 32 books, I never would have got to 33. And so the
Right.
miracle is always there, but you gotta stick with it. You gotta not quit before the miracle.
That's amazing advice. On that note, I think we're going to start wrapping it up there because I don't think we can top that. One thing is I do want you to give you the opportunity to call out your podcast site again.
Yes. So I have a wee writing podcast where I talk about self-publishing and writing and all the wonderful things that we've talked about today. And it is called Rage Against the Manuscript. And you'll find it on Spotify and all the big podcast things. And I've got a website with lots of resources and all the podcast episodes on it, which is www.rageagainstthemanuscript.com.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm sure that everybody will take advantage of that. On that note, I think we're at time, and I just want to say I am so happy that you got up early and joined us today, which is tomorrow, your time. Um, So I appreciate you sharing all this advice with us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me and for listening to me yammer on. And it's been heaps of fun.
Wonderful. All right. On that note, thank you so much, everyone. And as always, happy publishing.